That's okay. We had mentioned explains that when Moshe Rabbeinu heard that his passing, that the victory will cause his death, he went with immediacy. He went to war. So Rashi explains, why did he go with immediacy? Also, he did it with joy, and he did not delay. So we asked, how did Chazal know he did it with joy? He did it because evidently that was the will of Hashem. That's why Moshe, would he ever in any way delay? We say mitzvah, a mitzvah that presents itself, you shouldn't delay it. Right? We learn from matzah. It's a beautiful word from Rav Hutner. He asked a question. We say mitzvah, a mitzvah which presents itself, you shouldn't let it become chometz. Just as well, if you have something leavening, you have to bake it immediately before 18 minutes, because if 18 minutes passes, it becomes chometz. Identically, it says ushmartem esa matzos. Without the vowels, the word matzos could be read ushmartem esa mitzvos. Just as you have to watch over the dough that it should not become chometz, one has to attend to the mitzvah immediately, not to delay. It should not become chometz. From there, we learn mitzvah b'lo yotal tach mitzena. Now, I mean, the whole concept to do something with alacrity, what is that an indication of? That's an indication that you value it to such a degree, you esteem it, and therefore you attend to it immediately. One doesn't procrastinate, one doesn't delay whatsoever. So if Hutton has a question, if a person, let's say, was supposed to say birchas hamazon, shows the bench, chiv d'oraisa, let's say, you ate to a sated point, you're supposed to bench, and for some reason you delayed. And you didn't bench immediately, which you should have. And then moments later, when you did bench, the person said the birchas hamazon with tremendous kavanah. He asks, the innate value of that birchas hamazon was delayed. Is it the same birchas hamazon if it wouldn't have been delayed? However, he did not attach to it the alacrity because he delayed it. Or do you say no? It's a deficiency in the mitzvah itself. The birchas hamazon is no longer the same birchas hamazon. So he shows that since the Torah alludes to this concept from ushmartem es hamatzos, just as matzah, if you don't bake it within that certain time frame, it becomes chometz. Chometz is an innate deficiency in the dough. Identically, if you delay the mitzvah, it's not only you didn't fulfill the aspect of alacrity, but actually the mitzvah is deficient mitzvah. Why? So the understanding is, when you do something with immediacy, something that we value, something that we love, you don't delay. You don't delay. But seemingly, no, maybe because I have reverence for Hashem, it has that importance for whatever reason. That's why I don't delay. But Chazal say here, it's an indication of simcha. He did it with joy. A person who's an oiv Hashem, we speak about yiras Hashem and there's avodas Hashem. One could do something out of awe because he's awestruck, because he reveres Hashem. Or somebody does something out of avodas Hashem. We always explain I always mention the Ramban, Rabbi Kiva Eger in Yevomis, where the Morris speaks about the concept of asay dochalos asay, that if you have a conflict between a positive and negative commandment, we say the asay supersedes the negative commandments. He says, why? So he cites the Ramban. The Ramban explains that lo saseh is yiras Hashem. One doesn't cross lines out of reverence, out of fear. But one is motivated out of love. And since avodas Hashem is greater than yiras Hashem, so whenever you have a conflict between yiras Hashem and avodas Hashem, that's why asay is dochalos asay. That's the Ramban. That's what the Ramban explains. So avodas Hashem is the motivating factor. Ava drives. Reverence doesn't necessarily motivate you. Reverence means you don't cross lines. Ushmartem es hamatzah, shmira. You withdraw, you refrain. Ava is you pulled. Moshe Rabbeinu attended to the will of Hashem with immediacy. So that's avo. A person does anything out of love, there's a simcha aspect. There's a component of simcha. You do something you love, you enjoy it. So that Moshe Rabbeinu attended to it immediately, lo icher, did not delay, that's an indication of avos Hashem. And avos Hashem is simcha, it goes hand in hand. We find that by the Tocha, which we're going to read in Parshas Kisovo, why will Tocha come upon the Jews? So Hashem, it says in the Tocha, it's Hashem lavartem, it's Hashem elkech b'simcha u'b'tuv levav. We did not serve God with joy and with good heartedness. So the question is that a reason why one should be subject to Tocha, God forbid, to this level of punishment? So the simple understanding is that if you're pushing a boulder up a mountain, and you can only push the boulder up so long because eventually it weighs down on the person, you get crushed. Or you escape it and let it fall, and you leave unharmed. To be able to push something, to get something done, you need that level of motivation. What's the motivation? That's what? That's avodas Hashem. B'simcha tuv levav. The simcha, the good heartedness, you see it as the ultimate opportunity. You don't delay, and you don't tarry, and you don't get worn down. Because Klausha did not do it b'simcha, as a result of that, it didn't last. It lasts so long and so long, you can only push so long. After a while, it becomes too much. But if you do it with simcha, you never delay, and you never tire from it. A person who has oiv kesem lo yispa kesem, yesh lo mon rotzim osayim. You have 100, you want 200. Because a person has an interest and a desire for money, as much as you have, the gap gets wider, and you just want more and more. Because that's oiv kesef. If you love kesef, lo yisba kesef. You'll never be sated. You don't even tire from it. Just keep going. So if a person has a love for Hashem, there's no holding the person back. Why does a person stop? Because it's lacking. So therefore, the Torah says, why did you stop and ultimately end up where you ended up? Because the simcha aspect was lacking. The ava was lacking. Moshe Rabbeinu was the ultimate oiv Hashem. Because he was negated to Hashem, there were no holdbacks. And because no holdbacks, therefore he did it. He did not delay, he did it b'simcha, automatically. That's Chazal. But I said something the other day, even at another level. Anything Moshe did for Klal Yisrael, it was due to his avodas Hashem. Why was it due to his avodas Hashem? He prayed for us at time of Egel. At time of Raglim, we could have been destroyed. Hashem says, I will make you to be the future nation. Moshe Rabbeinu wouldn't hear of it. And he supplicated Hashem with mitzvah rachman, Hashem kel rachman l'chanu. Why? Because Moshe Rabbeinu understood what's the objective of creation? L'chvodi barosiv. If it's for kavod shamayim, that's what it's all about. So if it's kavod shamayim, and the only kavod shamayim, God's glory can only be through Klal Yisrael, because only Klal Yisrael has realm with the Torah. So if there's no Klal Yisrael, what happens? What happens to God's glory? There's no God's glory. As a result of that, Moshe Rabbeinu went to the nth degree to supplicate Hashem for our survival and our existence and our potential. Why? That was avodas Hashem. Because anything less than that infringes on Hashem's kavod shamayim. That's so Moshe Rabbeinu, everything he did for us was rooted in his connection with Hashem, of how he perceived God. That was avodas Hashem. That's how we explained it. Every day we say, Slach lo navin tichotonu, chalon malkediki v'shanu. That's the bracha of we're asking Hashem for forgiveness. Slach lo navinu ki chotonu. Chotonu is inadvertent. Hoshanu is deliberate. I mean, if a person's an observant Jew, and he's basically tries to do the right thing, when does he push up? Hoshanu is deliberate. So I always think to myself, do I violate the Torah? I'm pretty good at not speaking Lashon Hara because I studied it. I'm very careful. I'm very cognizant of not saying things I shouldn't say, even things that even are tinged with something which may bring something negative. I don't. I working on it for many years. But let's say I have an extra 5 minutes to study, and I know I could study, but I choose not to study. Is that chotonu or is that poshanu? Is that inadvertent or is that deliberate? It's deliberate. I know I should. But I said, I've studied so much. Although I know I could study another 5 minutes, it's not going to make a difference. But I know conceptually it is going to make a difference. Another 5 minutes of studying Torah it's another dimension of Torah. So why am I fixing on it? The answer is because I'm saying it's okay. But how can it be okay when it's not okay? Because I know if I could, I'm supposed to. The answer is I could live with it. So very often, good part of the way we function within the context of poshono. It's not chotono. It's not inadvertent. Right? You can't be too hard on yourself, but you have to be realistic that if you can do more and you don't do more, you have to ask yourself, why aren't I doing more? It's a question you have to ask yourself. There's a word from the Chazon Ish. The law is that a person who's mechal Shabbos knows about Shabbos, he touches your wine if it's not mevushal, it's not pasteurized. Since the Gemara tells us that a person mechal Shabbos, he's a mumel chol Torah kulo. Since if you don't observe Shabbos, it's like you're an apostate rejecting the Torah's entirety. Why? Because Shabbos is a admission or declaration that we acknowledge Hashem created the world. And if a person doesn't observe Shabbos, you're not in it. You're not in the game. And if you're not in the game, it's like you've rejected the Torah's entirety. That's how Rashi explains why a Mechal Shabbos is kilu. He's a mumel chol Torah. He's an apostate. He's rejecting the whole Torah. So therefore, there's a whole discussion. Person is a Jew, comes to your table. You have wine that's not pasteurized, not mevushal. Touches your wine, you got a problem. Because he's considered a mumel chol Torah kulo. He's like a non-Jew. So rabbinically, you should not be permitted to drink the wine. The Chazon Ish, which normally is machmir, he has a leniency. He says, in today's day and age, a person, what's called deliberate. Deliberate is you know it's wrong, and despite you know it's wrong, it's irrelevant to you. That's deliberate. Today, people are so jaded in their way of life, even though we know it's so unrelated to us. People don't have a capacity even to internalize it to any degree. It's purely abstract knowledge. And because it's abstract knowledge, the person is not considered an apostate. And therefore he rules that even a Mechal Shabbos, person doesn't observe Shabbos. Not one person was observant initially, and he gave it up. Another person, he was never observant. He hears about it, he knows about it, but where he's coming from, it barely doesn't even scratch the surface. And because it doesn't scratch the surface, he's not classified as the apostate who rejects the Torah. That's what he writes. So what I'm saying, in terms of ourselves, Pashanu, we're at a level, Pashanu means there's a cognizance, and despite the cognizance, we don't do it. That's Pesha. Otherwise, it borders, it's a semblance of Chatono. There's an inadvertency of it. That's the way, but that's a justification. But really, should we upgrade? Definitely we should upgrade. Because knowing better, and we're just passing on it, it's definitely lacking in avodas Hashem. Because if you really revere it and esteem it and value it sufficiently, we don't procrastinate something which we relate to it and value it to such a degree. We find Ezer, when he went to find a wife for Yitzchok, he gave, in addition, in advance, he had said, if the young maiden goes out and I will ask her for water and this and that, she's the one who's destined to be the wife of Yitzchok. And that was all of a sudden, Rivka goes out, drawing water, then he asks her, and what is the Torah? How does the Torah describe her behavior, Rivka? She rushes. She's rushing back and forth. We find out Avraham Avinu, when he had to host the Mavochim, right, the guests, he says, Mahari Vaseyugos, hurry, and prepare the cakes to the guests. Mari. The woman's 89 years old. What do you want from the woman? What do you mean, Mari? Rush, hurry. The answer is when it came to do a mitzvah, Hachnosis Orchim, and as we explained by Avraham Avinu especially, every moment was the ultimate moment, because to change a person from paganism to monotheism, that's what it's all about. We can't waste a moment. It's like saving a person's life. The house is burning. You don't delay. You put the fire on immediately. Therefore, Avram, even though his wife's 89 and he's 99 years old, he says, Mari Vasiu, hurry. Rivka, you have to attend to somebody's need. He needs water. She rushes. And if it waits a few more moments, she's rushing back and forth, drawing water, bringing water for him to be able to drink. What's the rushing? So the Seforno says that's an indication. The zerizus is an indication of what? Of the degree that you esteem the mitzvah. That's the way she values chesed. And that was the midah, that was the attribute of Avram Avinu. The way she behaved, she displayed the attribute of Avram Avinu. That's the Seforno over there. That's what the Torah describes when he saw her rushing and hurrying. That's the whole concept of mitzvah b'liyot al tachmitzenu. Soon enough is not soon enough. You have to do it immediately. Answer it. Good. Ask the question.
How does someone does not have kavanah, for example, saying a bracha, how does that not equal the same type of poshea as someone has 5 minutes to learn, they don't learn?
Okay, I'll tell you the difference. This is the difference. As I said, poshea means you think about it and you've made a decision. That's poshea. I think about it. I say to myself, I should be learning now. I could be learning, but it's okay. That borders on poshea. But if it doesn't even enter your mind, you feel you learned enough. It's not, you don't feel the obligation to learn more. That means you're out of touch. That's shocking. But to think and make a decision, not that borders on poshea. That's deliberate. That's the difference. One doesn't have kavanah. I was distracted. It's not I chose not to have kavanah. I would want to have kavanah, but unfortunately, because I'm not focused enough, that's why I don't have kavanah. A person doesn't think about how much he should learn, and he thinks he learned. He's done what he's done. That's shogeg. Because factually, you're not finished. But the person who knows he should learn more, and I think to myself, it's okay if I don't. That's called that borders on the poshea. That's the difference. Just tell you a story about the Chavetz Chaim. Chavetz Chaim, he lived like a malach. Everything he did it to the nth degree, l'shem shamayim, for the sake of Hashem. He was reading, his son writes about him, that before he did anything he did in his life, he said l'shem mitzvos. He would eat food, l'shem mitzvos, serving Hashem. Everything was l'shem mitzvos. Nothing was not predicated that he did it for that reason. Well, the Chavetz Chaim, there's a question how old he was when he passed. Was he 99? Was he 103? But he lived a long life. So when he got older, really older, in his 90s, people get older, they forget. So what happened? He wanted to drink a glass of water, and he couldn't remember if he said it. So he reprimanded himself. How could I forget if I said a bracha? If I would have said the bracha with sufficient kavanah, I wouldn't have forgotten. So evidently, he said to himself, it must be I wasn't focused sufficiently, because I would have focused sufficiently, would have left that imprint on me. I would have known I said the bracha. So why am I questioning myself? Evidently, I didn't say the bracha with sufficient kavanah. That's the way the Chavetz Chaim evaluated himself. Even though a person gets older, the person is forgetful, regardless of how much kavanah he had. But that was the yardstick which the Chavetz Chaim evaluated himself. How could I forget? If I had sufficient kavanah, it's such an experience, you can't forget that. Evidently, I wasn't involved sufficiently, focused sufficiently. Okay? With us, our mindset is not there. If it's there and you choose to check out, that's deliberate. But if it's something which you're not there, and you don't even think about it, and that's why you're distracted, that's shocking. That's not poshea. The Chovos HaLevavos had said, although many things in life are all predetermined, your livelihood, many things, where you're going to see, where you're not going to succeed, everything. But yet, we see through our own lens, and we do things differently. We believe that we could do things even though it's not within so-called within the cards. But factually, you can't. You're endowed with things for purpose. If you don't use it for that purpose, we'll see, that's called embezzlement. Person is given responsibility, and he says, look, I'm giving you $100,000, and $10,000 of the 100,000, I want you to distribute to the tzedakah, for the poor. And the person takes the 100,000, the additional 10 pockets it, or doesn't give it away. What is that? That's called embezzlement. You stole. Because the one who gave you the money, although he gave you the 100,000, and it's within your ability to do whatever you want with the additional 10, but the charge was that you must give it to tzedakah. How do you not give it to tzedakah? Well, I earned it, but you don't say the reason why you earned the extra 10 is not for yourself, because we say that one's financial stipend is determined from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Within that stipend, the money that was given to you, the additional 10 was not your stipend to be used for yourself. That was going to distribute. But people believe what they want to believe. And that's the challenge. A person says, if Hashem wants me to live, I could live irresponsibly. The Chofetz says, no, it's not true. I'm meant to live, I could drink poison. I'm meant to live, I could put myself in the presence of oncoming traffic. If you want to live, you have to meet certain preconditions. You have to live responsibly. You have to eat. You have to sleep. You have to take care of yourself. But if I'm destined to live, I'm going to live. No, you're not going to live in either case. You have to meet certain prerequisites to be able to be part of the program. You check out of the program has no relevance to you anymore. This is what the Chofetz is speaking about. Some person dies, and he's the cause of his own death. And factually, if in fact your death is attributed to himself, it's like he committed murder. It's as if somebody else killed him. Would you have a right to live this way? Although we only died. When a person dies, even when he acts irresponsibly, why did he die? Because Hashem says, if you live this way, you're not going to survive it. Like if you go into a fire, there's no way you can survive it. But why does a fire take a person's life? Hashem could perform a miracle. Avraham Avinu went into the fire, came out alive. Chanan Mishol V'Zari went to a fire that came out alive. Because under normal circumstances, going to fire means, but Hashem decreed it. Bishum Gilgul. Under no circumstance could you, even through causality, you can't be the cause of somebody else's death. And the closer you are to the victim who you kill, could you imagine? A person kills a stranger. Okay, there's no feeling, there's no connection. If a person kills a relative, we should have compassion for and love for and everything else. The claim is much greater. How do you say to her, how do you do such a thing? A stranger is one thing, although it's not justifiable. But somebody you love, we speak about a betrayal. A person betrays a friend. What's a betrayal? Based on the relationship, how do you behave this way? A betrayal is so extreme in the negative, you betrayed. God forbid a person kills another person, doesn't know him, and he has to wait to see him in the negative. Okay, but one who you loved and you always see him in a certain context, how do you take that person's life? So the claim against that person is a greater claim, the one who took the other person's life. First takes his own life because he lived irresponsibly, and you justify it. There's no justification. I'll give you an example. God forbid. That a non-Jew that hates a Jew is one thing. Hates him so to Yaakov. What about if a Jew hates a Jew? Whereas a chiyuv to love him. And what's going on, the polarization in Israel between the left and the right. Just recently, people openly, Memza Knesset from the left, and the way they speak about Haredim, literally the way they express it is no different, lahavdil, the way a Nazi speaks about a Jew. The intensity of that hate, they wish they wouldn't be alive. And if they could do anything, they'll take them out of existence. To that degree. Whoever heard of it? That's what you speak about your brother. Because he's a Haredi, because he's a this. I couldn't care what. How do you talk about that? So the claim against these people are much more than a claim of Goy against the Jew. What do you expect a non-Jew think about a Jew? Okay, he's a non-Jew. But a Jew, to talk about a Jew in this manner, how do you talk about a Jew this way? So the claim is it's a much stronger claim. That's the sinas chinam among Jews. How do you have sinas chinam? That you hate someone else is one thing. But how do you have sinas chinam? If it's a baseless hate, how do you even? And that's the reason why we don't have a Beis Hamikdash. Even among Jews themselves, the ones who should know better, the sinas chinam. Chavetz Chaim writes in his introduction, why hasn't the Beis Hamikdash been rebuilt? Because the cause why it was taken hasn't been corrected. That's the Chavetz Chaim. A person is the cause of his own death. The punishment, the liability is much greater. It's like a person's a slave. The master tells the slave, I want you to watch this location for a certain period of time. And he says, I don't want you to leave your post until my agent comes and relieves you of that post. And when the slave sees that the agent of his master is tarrying, is not coming, he leaves this post and leaves it unattended. You know what this is? How do you leave it unattended? His master becomes enraged and he gives him an extreme punishment. How do you leave your post? How do you behave this way? This is total shirking responsibility. We talk about Hashem Echino, Posheya, gross negligence. It's not justified under any circumstance. Person, God forbid, is the cause of his own death. You're leaving the whole concept of serving Hashem. You're entering into a defined position. You define your master. Your master says you got to take care of yourself. You have to watch the post. You can't abandon it. You have to be cognizant. You know, there's a person speeds. One gets a ticket. You speed above a certain speed. It's called reckless. That's called reckless. You're being reckless. Person goes over 90 miles an hour, 95. That's more than speeding. That's reckless. It's not only you're violating the law, you're acting recklessly for yourself and for others because you have no control. You can't be in a position where you don't have control. So people live their lives like they're out of control. They don't think they're out of control. We eat what we want. You can't eat what you want. As a Jew, you have to observe dietary laws. You have to say a bracha before you. You have to acknowledge the master. Well, I paid for it. I do it. I do what I want. There's no such thing. There's a master and you're a subject. The subject is bound to the will of the master. If we say Rishon b'chayem kruim mesim, Rosh even when he's alive, his classification is a mace. Because he's not attending to his neshama and he's destroying his neshama. So what is he doing? He's living irresponsibly. It's like a low tirtzach on the spiritual level. That's what it is. Here I give you a soul, I give you some of the ultimate level. And what do you do with it? Not only are you not advancing it, you're destroying it. You're abusing it. Tremendous claim. Therefore, it's mason. You're supposed to be tzaddikim b'chaim kuriyim misozim kuriyim b'chaim. A tzaddik, even if he passes away, he's still considered alive. The Rosh, even when he's alive, he's classified as a mess, as a corpse. Because for all intent purposes, his neshama is non-functional. Not only is it not functional, it's actually decomposing because he's destroying it with his behavior. So there's a claim.
Rabbi, when we wake up in the morning and we say, "Oh, kind of Shama," what does that mean?